Hey, I'm Billy Cox, and I'm General Manager at Intel, and I'd like to introduce to you a new product today, Service Assurance Administrator. More and more, we're seeing enterprise IT move their critical workloads into shared multi-tenant environments. Multi-tenant meaning there's multiple businesses sharing the same environment. The workloads that we see enterprise IT want to move into these shared multi-tenant environments, cloud environments, they need to know that when they move it there, they can guarantee its performance, that they understand the trust requirements for the compliance environment. So when you bring a workload into these shared cloud environments, you have to meet an SLA for the workload. An SLA being the service level agreement between the owner of the workload and the infrastructure. We also have trust requirements, and that trust requirement says this workload needs the infrastructure to support a certain kind of operation, which generally needs to comply with a regulatory requirement. A very common problem in these shared multi-tenant environments, you have a noisy neighbor. A noisy neighbor is a virtual machine that, for whatever reason, consumes more than his fair share of resources within the system and impacts negatively the performance of the other virtual machines running on that same system. We did a lot of customer conversations, and consistently in every customer conversation, one of the things they all said was, I believe only Intel could solve this problem because you guys understand the hardware. They expected us to, frankly, to go solve this problem. We've created a new product called Intel Data Center Manager Service Assurance Administrator. The software product we created for those environments where you need to assure performance and you need to assure trust. Service Assurance Administrator lets you move workloads into the cloud with confidence. SAA is a plugin into OpenStack and extends its functionality, so it's a natural way, if you already have an OpenStack, to add this capability. A virtual machine would be presented to OpenStack to be hosted in this environment. We then have to pick a machine to run it on, and so we use the OpenStack methods to do the workload placement. We extend those so that we can make sure it gets on the best node to run it. So a workload being hosted in this environment needs to have a specification of how much resources we allocate to it. We use part of the SLA specification, something called a service compute unit, to use as its performance target. The key to implementing an SLA for a workload on a server is understanding what its current performance is. And if you're in a multi-tenant environment, you need a way to measure it. So what we invented was a way to use instrumentation in the hardware to determine what the performance of a VM is at its actual runtime. We get a number that we can then compare to the target service compute unit for that virtual machine. And then based upon the results that we get, we know it's achieving its target performance or it's not, and we can make adjustments. If it's getting more performance than it was allocated, we dial it back. If he's not getting enough, we try to give it some more. If we can't give it more, there might be a noisy neighbor. So what we can do right now with SAA is we can detect that there are noisy neighbors on a server, and therefore there's a high level of contention for shared resources. What we get to do in the next generation is we can see which virtual machine is actually being the noisy neighbor, and then a generation after that we'll be able to constrain his impact on his neighbor so that he's no longer noisy. SAA, in addition to performance, provides the trust requirements needed by enterprise IT organizations. The trust attribute in SAA is implemented using Intel TXT. So at the end of the day, SAA gives you ensured performance and trust for workloads in your multi-tenant environment. You can be confident that you're taking your workloads and placing them in an environment, and they will get the performance and trust that's expected. For service providers, SAA gives you the means to create new offerings with assured performance or to pack workloads more densely onto your existing equipment, therefore saving CapEx. With this release of SAA, we focused on compute. In the future, we'll be adding quality of service for storage and for networking. So if you'd like to learn more about Intel Service Assurance Administrator, go to www.intel.com/assurance.